Good evening. Sorry for our delay in getting back out here this evening, but welcome to the February 23rd meeting of the Town Council. If you'd kindly rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, as for announcements, we have upcoming meetings, March 9th and March 23rd are regular meetings of the council. And important dates to remember are Wednesday, February 22nd through Friday, March 3rd at 5 p.m. on March 3rd. The filing period for town office will to be elected at town meeting on April 11th, 2023. You have to be signed up during that window. And then Wednesday, March 15th at 7 p.m. in the all-purpose room at the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, located at 26 Babusick Lake Road, is the deliberative session. Paul, did you have any announcements?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. 2023 dog license available at the town clerk's office. Per New Hampshire state law, all owners of dogs 4 months and older are required to be licensed required to have a license by May 1st. Owners must present a valid rabies certificate and a neutering or spading certificate if applicable. If you no longer have your dog, please contact the town clerk's office at 603-424-3651 so they can update their records. Parks and Rec Department invites you to join them this Saturday, February 25th for the 31st annual Winter Carnival at Wasserman Park from 12 to 3 p.m. I really want to think that Matt requested the snowstorm that we had. Because if you remember last time he was here, it's like another year without snow. So it's on him. I'm blaming him for the snow. There are 26 groups providing free games, crafts, raffles, and other activities. We are anticipating a special appearance by Mac, the police comfort dog, as well as Oscar, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Food is available for purchase during the event. If you have any questions, please call Parks and Recreation Department at 603-882-1046, or you can go online and check the schedule at www.merrimackparkswithanSnrec.org. Once again, that's merrimackparksnrec.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Comments from the press and public. If you'd like to address the council, you can step up to either mic here. And seeing no one, we have no recognitions, resignations, retirements, no appointments, and no public hearings. We might have updates from legislative delegation. Oh, thank you. And while they're coming up, Andy Hunter has been excused from this evening's meeting. You're looking kind of casual tonight.
Yeah.
It's unlike you.
Trying to keep you on your toes, Mr. Chairman.
So for the record, I'm Janine Nodder, 19 Whittier Road.
Bill Boyd, 139 Joppa Road.
I'm actually here for two things. One is to update you on the bridge bill, House Bill 20. I was able to special order it yesterday to the first item of business because our late speaker, Dick Hinch's family was in the gallery watching the proceedings. So Bill Boyd, the bill went to his committee and he wrote the committee report.
You want me to read it? Okay. If that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
Thank you. Through you to the council and to the community of Merrimack, House Bill 20 naming a bridge in the town of Merrimack for the Honorable Richard Dick Hinch ought to pass. Representative Bill Boyd for Public Works and Highways. This bill names the Bedford Road Bridge, which crosses the Babusick Brook in Merrimack after our former House Speaker, Dick Hinch. A proud graduate of Marblehead High School and Salem State University, an even prouder veteran of the United States Navy, Dick was a man who dedicated his life in service to others and to the community of Merrimack. His numerous charitable works include the National Soup Kitchen, the Liberty House, and Children of the Fallen Patriots. His civic work in Merrimack included stints with the Merrimack Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, and Lions Clubs. He remained active with the Merrimack's American Legion and Veterans of Foreign War Post. Most importantly, his admirable commitment to governing our town is particularly noteworthy. Budget Committee, Solid Waste, the Library Development and Marketing Committee, Zoning Board of Adjustment, Chair of our former Board of Selectmen, and 6 terms as a member of the New Hampshire General Court, culminating in his election to being Speaker of the New Hampshire House of Representatives, highlighting his commitment to serving others and getting the best outcomes possible. Dick dedicated his public service in making things better for his community of Merrimack and his fellow Granite Staters, a fact that gave him much pride and satisfaction. Undoubtedly, the source behind his pride and satisfaction was a loyal and strong commitment to his family, a loving and faithful husband of 36 years to his wife Patricia, a devoted father to Jay Hinch, Kelly Snow and her husband Jesse Snow, and posthumously a beloved grandfather to his grandson Charlie Snow. Dick's final words as Speaker of the New Hampshire House of Representatives personifies the essence of his true character and ebullient humanity. Quote, "We may have different ideas, but we all want to do what we believe is right, and there is nothing political or partisan about that," end quote. The naming of the Bedford Road Bridge in honor of Richard Dick Hinch will serve as his legacy to the town of Merrimack, a befitting reminder that his service to Merrimack built bridges for the community and the Granite State. Unanimous vote out of Public Works and Highways.
Very nice. Thank you, Bill.
So Bill's chairman read these remarks yesterday, and he asked for a roll call vote. So I stood up to support the roll call vote. It was unexpected. I thought it was going to be a voice vote, but it passed 356 to 4. So the next step is it goes to the Senate. So there'll be another update.
And because it's a roll call vote, the 4 nays are on the public record.
Yes.
Just if anybody's curious.
Well, one of them chased after me. I heard somebody on the stairs, and she said, I didn't want a roll call. There was no reason for it. I'm like, oh, okay.
So that was the rationale for voting against it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
intriguing.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. It is.
Nothing is ever without drama.
Nothing without drama, correct?
So the other item I'm here for is, I drive by Watson Park all the time. Everybody does. And I'm remembering the late Representative Phil Strait, who was Nancy Harrington's husband. I would always see him at Watson Park. He was just always doing something, watering the plants. I think he carried in the water, watered the plants. He just dedicated so much time there, volunteer time. He was on the subcommittee for the gazebo. And I saw that there's a granite bench there, and I would like to have another one there, one in his memory.
Did you want to speak to that when we get to that agenda item?
Oh, I didn't realize it was an agenda item. I'm sorry.
Yes, it is.
It's the first one.
Okay.
Just stay seated.
I hold that thought.
If you'd like to, because I have it as you and Bill presenting. It's the agenda item. So
Okay.
if you want to do that, that'll be great. We just have
Wait.
one town manager report and one thing just before that. To move it forward?
Well, does Nancy have legislative?
Okay,
Is the
all right.
question.
Yeah, Nancy, do you have anything to bring forward?
I do. Thank you. I just one thing. It was pretty amazing to see the support. I mean, I was surprised to see 4. But anyway, it was a good bill, and it had huge support. The only other thing that I want to mention, because I had mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, is HB 614. We voted on that yesterday as well, and that's the bill that will gain an appropriation of $500,000 for the Department of Health and Human Services to fund the kidney cancer protocol study, the feasibility study. And the reason we need that is that's sort of foundational for the next step, so that we can actually apply for grants and things that we'll be more likely to get. But anyway, that passed yesterday on a voice vote, and I would just encourage everybody here to reach out to all the Merrimack State reps and have them reach out to their colleagues to get it through finance, so we can, we're using other sources of funding first, but it's something that the knowledge gleaned from this will be applicable to communities all over New Hampshire. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Nance.
I do have one more other thing, Mr. Chairman, just to bring to the council's attention. House Bill 35, which is the bill requiring student identification cards to include the National Eating Disorders Hotline. It was legislation that was offered by Merrimack freshman high school student Matthew Brown. And he reached out to Rosemary Rung, myself, Representative Bob Healy. That was brought up before the House today, and it passed 238-105, so it's on to the Senate. But I want to publicly recognize Matt Brown for having a lot, being brave and being courageous to share his story, not just about himself, but with other individuals that suffer from eating disorders. And he educated a lot of people in the House of Representatives, both at the committee level and today during testimony, during debate, I should say, during debate in the House today. So you should feel very proud that the kids that are going to Merrimack High School, they do an amazing job, and Matthew Brown certainly epitomizes one of the very best that are currently going through the school system. So he deserves our thanks for his leadership on this issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. The kid is a freshman in high school. He seems like a senior in college. He's just amazing. I've saw the little video of him.
He's mature
testifying.
beyond years.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To your point, exactly. I was happy to co-sponsor that bill as well. And Matthew is a
I apologize, Nancy. I apologize.
That's right. No, it's a phenomenal,
Yeah.
phenomenal kid, and what a great advocate for his peers. And one of the best parts of this was the when this bill passed, it was passed as the Matthew Brown Act, which was a decision made by the committee because he was so articulate and so poised. They said, we want to name it in honor of him. So that wasn't an ask, but that was something in the committee. So he really represented Merrimack well, and he was pretty excited today. And he, Representative Chris Pappas came and took some photos up in the. So it was a
That made
good
his day,
day.
sure.
So, nicely done, Matthew.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Nance. Any more legislative updates? Should we, if you want to, the next thing's a town manager's report. We'll keep it in mind. Feel free to stay, if you don't mind.
Real quick, in the interest of time, just two quick things. Heard from Executive Council Wheeler yesterday. Two things for Merrimack was approved by the executive committee. One was that $50,000 grant that Jonathan came before the council. They approved that grant. And the other one was we finally got our PFAS grant guaranteed. So PFAS remediation grant for over $1 million was approved by Executive Council. So starting probably around March 1st, we'll be able to start rolling out our rebate program for people putting filtration systems in their home from the town.
Great, thank you. The next thing is a consent agenda, so that'll be, just take a second. Motion by Tom Koenig, seconded by Lon Woods. All those in favor of the consent agenda, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed or abstained. That's 600. Next on the agenda, no old business. Council to consider a request to place a granite memorial bench in Watson Park in the memory of Honorable Phil Strait. Here to present to us is Janine Anotter, representative, and Representative Bill Boyd. Thank you.
Well, I jumped the gun because I didn't look at the agenda, so I apologize for that. So everything I said before,
Still home.
you want to add to it?
I'm going to get choked up because I'm looking at my former colleague across here.
Don't make her cry.
They broke the mold with Phil. He was not just a colleague to more so for Janine, but for somebody like myself who had moved to the community and was beginning to get involved. Phil served not just as a friend, but as a mentor. And he had a very soothing way of looking at issues in town, a very thoughtful way of looking at things. And he brought that, from my perspective, sitting on the outside, looking up in Concord, it was always a pleasure to put Phil's sign on my lawn for the 4 years that, well, the two times that he ran for election, because I always felt that he first and foremost had the community in mind with every single vote that he took up in Concord. But secondly, with having the perspective of having the community in mind, he absolutely represented Merrimack. I mean, he was a voice for Merrimack up in Concord. It wasn't just a voice for all the different issues that were going through Concord at a particular time. I personally felt, accurately reflected the voice of Merrimack, excuse me, during that given period of time. And, I think as Janine alluded to, and I'm sure Nancy has attested to, placing a granite bench at Watson Park would certainly be a befitting, not just a memorial, but a befitting reminder of what Phil meant to the community and some of the things that he quietly did to promote the positive image that all of us, in our own way, shape, and form, work every day to make Merrimack, as I like to say, not to be cliche, but best place in New Hampshire to work, live, and raise a family. And Phil certainly contributed to that. So I certainly think a granite bench would be absolutely apropos to honor his legacy for what he gifted to Merrimack.
And I don't know if you remember or recall the Merrimack Rocks. We had Merrimack Rocks in Watson Park. There, because we drive up DW Highway, there was a big giant Phil face at Watson Park.
Still have that.
You still- So he was commended for the, being
It's the first
just an
volunteer.
awesome
Just a
Merrimack
good, just a
citizen.
good person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The Yakaba Award.
Yes.
The Dave Yakaba Award.
So I gave the memorial remarks in the house when we lost Phil. Of course, I had to put him with Tony Pellegrino because the two went together, Tony and Phil. But of course, they were Waldorf and Statler.
Oh,
to
they
me.
commuted together.
The two old men in the balcony.
Yes.
They're from the Muppet Show.
They're from the Muppet Show.
The Muppet
'cause
Show.
I would carpool with them, and I sat in the back, and that was my view. The two old men.
Perfect. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything? We have to approve it. Is there a location? I think I read in the,
Well, we have differing opinions. Because, see, I would drive by Watson Park, and I would always see Phil up, and we did sine waves there. It was just the front by the street is where I always pictured him. And there is a memorial bench there now, and I thought another one to match it would be nice. But talking to Nancy said, but, over by the gazebo, it might be used more. So whatever you all decide, it's fine.
And I'm happy with whatever. I think, and someone else mentioned it, you're right, the top is probably the best. Because when those trees were put in, there was no water. And every other day, he would take 100-gallon drum and bring it and water the trees so that they wouldn't die. And he used to take up and down, the American flag was there. And he would, if it rained, he would go and get the American flag and take it down. And and the people, the firemen would say, "Who's that guy?" And they realized it was him, because to him, and to this day I do the same thing in my house. It's just that was for him, that was the respect for the flag and all the rest. So the reality is, I think you're right. I think that is probably the most appropriate, because that's where he would sit. You're absolutely right. So I pull back my gazebo idea. I do think the appropriate place is up.
Barbara?
So motion,
Yes, need a motion.
motion to approve the request to place a granite memorial bench in Watson Park in memory of the Honorable Phil Strait.
Motion by Barbara, second by Nancy Murphy. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
I'll
opposed?
recuse myself.
Opposed? Abstain. Nancy will abstain. That's a 5-1 vote, and thank you. guys.
501.
5-0.
She's
I
abstaining.
apologize. Yes, I knew that. And I
And I
said
want
that,
to
just-
thank you both for that honor.
Yep.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
I've never done this before, so I did try to get hold of a granite dealer, and we're going to talk Monday. He was away this week. So, because I don't know how it works. I've never.
There's a
done this
local guy
before.
too.
Well,
Brooks,
there's-
yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at, Paul can probably direct you. There's,
Yeah,
Okay. We'll
I don't
be
know
in
which
touch then.
one. I saw the
Okay.
paperwork, but I don't know whose name was on it. I just saw it wasn't a bill, it was a quote. But
Yes.
But yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
we'll pass
so
that.
that
Unless-
policy that we were updating last week,
It would be consistent.
yeah, we just
Right.
ought to make sure we're consistent with that. It hasn't been adopted as updated, but it has a whole piece in it about granite benches. And
Size and.
so there's requirements there.
I had stopped watching the meeting by that point, so I did miss that. I apologize.
Did we put you to sleep?
No, I actually, it was the legislative update is when I faded out of the meeting. 'Cause somebody I was with didn't want to watch it anymore. That was the only reason. So I wasn't at our last meeting, but I appreciate it. Thank you much. I didn't want to bore you with all those details, but that'll be real good. It was definitely an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Item number 2, under new business, the council to consider the acceptance of a donation from a customer of 5 Town of Merrimack ink stamps with an estimated value of $50 to be used at each window station in the town clerk tax collector's office pursuant to RSA 31:95E and Charter Article 8 Section 15. And I actually was at the window and saw the clerk tell the guy it's to the Town of Merrimack, because he's right now, there was a stamp right next to him already, but he didn't know it was there. She probably didn't at that point either. But so
Basically, you
It's what
you
it
hit
is.
it in a nutshell. Gentleman came in, they said, check's made out to the town of Merrimack. Goes, can I have a stamp? They said, we don't know where they are. Came back the next day with 5 of them and said,
stamps.
now you know where they are.
so it's an anonymous donation, or
I think Diane knows, but we'll send a thank you.
it made the constituents' life easier too. It
Yes.
just boom. All right, pleasure of the council.
I'd
Nancy?
like to make a motion to accept the donation from a customer of 5 Town of Merrimack stamps with an estimated value of $50 to be used at each window station in the town clerk tax collector's office pursuant to RSA 31:95-E and Charter Article 8-15.
Motion by Nancy Harrington, seconded by Barbara. No further discussion. Call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstaining? Just 6-0-0. Item number 3 under new business, council to consider the capital improvement program withdrawal request from the computer capital reserve fund for the purpose of storage devices. And Jonathan's here this evening to lay his case out. Hi, Jonathan.
So we're passing down a handout right now. Because of information technology and security on what we're looking to do with the storage, we're presenting this packet tonight, with some backup information. Jonathan's here to go over what we're looking to do.
So essentially, we've been assessing the infrastructure since I started here. We
Can
have
you-
a lot of agents.
Can you pull the mic closer?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
That good. Okay,
thank
sorry about that. So we've been assessing the infrastructure and trying to, work a plan to move us forward, minimize failures. We have some aging gear. We recently brought in the police and fire department's application, which makes it a little bit more critical than the standard business operation. So we need to maintain, redundancy, reliability, and move us forward. The equipment we're running is over 7 years old, and it's we've had some failures of some of the components of that equipment, and it's getting to a critical nature. Plus, the cybersecurity component on the government sector is getting significant. There's a lot of attacks on a regular basis. So the second component of this sum of money would allow us to have 2 units, a primary and a replica, which we do not have today. And we could, leave that replica a 24-hour delta, so that way, in the event the primary is targeted and compromised, we could easily spin the environment up very quickly in that disaster recovery mode. So that is what we're looking to do. So what I'm requesting is the sum of $69,000 to be drawn from the capital reserve fund, which we put money aside in that capital reserve fund for a project like this when we need it.
I'm waiting for our technical knowledge people
Um,
to ask questions as well. Looking at you. This is your, Andy's not here, so it falls on you.
I don't have any questions. I mean, I certainly agree that the equipment is probably dated, that it needs to be updated. We need to have a backup ability to fall back to. I thought we had it, actually.
Well,
but-
we have an off-site disaster recovery service component, but you know, where we replicate every night outside. This would be a near replica here, so it would give us a quicker response to then rely. You know, the cloud takes time to spin up, but we have that in place today, so we're in good shape there. Like if we did have a problem, we have tested that, and it's proven to be effective. But it takes anywhere from 4 to about 16 hours for them to restore the environment in that architecture. So this
Right,
would
and
be
this would allow you to back up instantly.
yeah, this would be like a 15-minute to under an hour
Switch over,
runtime is
yeah.
what I'm looking for, mainly in the nature of the emergency dispatch component. That's really where I'm going at it, you know, from that. Hopefully we don't have to use that, but having it in place would give, you know, peace of
Redundancy.
mind to the police and emergency service, as well as, I mean, we have our finance applications and all the town clerk. I mean, we have a lot of applications here that the citizens rely on.
Now, you mentioned in your write-up here that not only is it antiquated, and this will replace what we have today, but it will also be scaled for the future.
Correct.
As we bring in police and fire and building and stuff like that, software, that's all going to be able to be backed and managed by this.
Managed by that, and we'll gain capacity here, which we're very limited on capacity right now. We're pretty much at the end of the rope. So this gives us additional drive slots to backfill hard drives at a later date if we need it. And, you know, spent a lot of time working through different manufacturers and getting some preliminary quotes. And the original ones were coming in at, you know, 4 times this value. So in some creative negotiation skills that I have, I kind of got them all back and forth in line with, you know, something that will meet our needs, bring us a step forward in the future, increase performance, reliability, and give us that safety net of the replica at a reasonable price, you know, compared to what's out there. So.
Is this going to have an ongoing maintenance?
Yeah, so
expense as well?
in this plan, I built in a 5-year maintenance plan on the hardware. So it's fully covered for 5 years against any failures. Manufacturer's on the hook for that. So we wouldn't incur any maintenance costs related to that piece of hardware, other than doing server maintenance tasks, which kind of relate to it, but that's started the standard operating procedure.
And the off-site storage is going to continue to be used?
Correct. The offsite would be there as our ultimate safety net in case we had a natural disaster or something unpredictable where the building was compromised. Then we can, you know,
Cool.
do that. And the longer term plan would be to move that replica to another town facility, so it wouldn't all be staged in this facility. That's part of my main plan. Is
Right.
we're looking at the highway garage has a serve room that was built out there. So there's some components involved with that, but eventually my thought process is it could go over there, you know. The wastewater is another possibility with some of the renovations going down there, that we could find a location there, because that gives us a little bit more of a distance between this location. They're all connected via fiber now, except for the highway garage. So that's the component, is it could easily go to wastewater, which gives us that good distance. But there's challenges in that building, as we know.
Right, okay. It sounds like a great program, and I appreciate the work you put into putting this together. You said, as I recall, that you were starting out at a much higher number?
Yeah, I mean, most of the initial quotes were in the $200,000 arena. I bought a lot of this gear outside of here, and on average, that, you know, they get into that 150 to 200 with some, you know, going back and forth with some of the manufacturers. In this case, they all have come back and realize that there's a need for us, and they understand we're on a limited budget, so they've come back with, you know, very aggressive pricing, I guess would be the word to put it, that puts us into a good platform that will move us forward.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's a big difference. Barbara?
Yeah, fortunately, Jonathan, you already touched on a couple of things I wanted to, mainly the time involved to spin up after you do a disaster recovery and you have that kind of total loss of system. failure. So, and I don't think people realize that when you, even though we have disaster recovery available, you're talking 16 business hours,
Correct.
not clock hours. So theoretically, you could have your emergency services plus your customer service apps down for 2 business days, which is, from an emergency standpoint, that's untenable. We just can't deal with that. So I'm glad to see that you're putting these in, and I'm sure, seeing how these will be new, they're solid state, so they spin faster to bring
Yeah,
back up
correct.
again. And
These are based, obviously running all solid state would be the preferred platform, but the numbers would,
Yeah.
very costly. So
That's
what
the
we end up,
200,000.
so this is based off hybrid architecture where we're utilizing SSD and some spinning disks and some caching disks to be able to maintain the performance of all flash, but get us the capacity that we need to
Right.
work with.
right, and they
So
fit
it's-
in the current racks.
Yeah.
Cool.
They actually will consolidate quite a bit of equipment in this component. So right now, we're running approximately about a rack full of storage. So they're higher density, much smaller hard drives. We're looking at probably about a third of a rack. So in addition to that, these are going to be more power efficient, so we'll have a better runtime component. Hard to understand that on the power bill right now.
Right,
But
right.
when it's all in place, I would suspect maybe a 5 to 10% savings off of our drawer out of there right now.
Great.
Plus, it'll give us a little bit more runtime on our battery backup system and a few other items in between the generator spin-up process. So,
Sounds like
That's-
fun.
yeah,
And I just want to say I'm impressed, Barbara, of your knowledge.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, Barbara knows
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
more than I do. You have an assistant over there.
Oh, good. Yeah, perfect. Because she's on the planning board. She
What I did in my old job. IT security,
pre-nursing or
after nurse.
after nursing.
Very good. What's the pleasure of the council? Are there any further discussion? No, see.
So can we withdraw a fixed amount based on this?
Up to
agenda item?
$69,000. I
Okay,
think
we didn't
can-
agenda a number, we just agendaed a withdrawal, so it doesn't really matter.
No, we're
Okay.
withdrawing from it. We're just asking for $69,000, and that should be sufficient.
So I move that we approve the withdrawal of up to $69,000 from the Computer Capital Reserve Fund to purchase storage devices.
Motion by Tom Koenig, seconded by Barbara. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained, 600. Thanks, Jonathan, and don't go away.
yeah, we have one more.
Item number 4, under new business, the council will consider participating in the Dell Seed Program, which allows the town to test Dell's newest devices and keep them in exchange for providing feedback. The estimated donation amount is $1,500 pursuant to RSA 31:95E and Charter Article 8, Section 15.
So, Jonathan, being on the phone, trying to get the best deals for the town, was talking to a Dell representative, and we never knew this program existed and was available to us. So this is based on all Jonathan's hard work in dealing with Dell and Microsoft and everybody else who has tablets. So Jonathan can explain what the SEED program is and what Dell is willing to do for the community.
Yeah, so the seed program is, as everyone knows, technology changes. So Dell is constantly coming out with new laptops and tablets and different types of devices. So the seed program, we become a little bit of a guinea pig in a sense, where we get a chance to try the latest tablet or the latest laptop with the option that, we only get one per annual year. But we can try a laptop. In this case, we have some needs here for different groups, like the fire department. With the new application, they're tethering between iPads, Microsoft devices, possible laptops in the vehicles. So this would give us the ability to bring in a different device for them to test out, and possibly several different devices, and return them. And at the end of the day, we have the option, if we select one of those devices, up to $1,500 that Dell would send that to us. We get to keep it. So that's the concept of it. But we do have to provide feedback on the device, such, because it's going to be the leading edge processor and memory. So they're going to want feedback. How does the device run? Does it crash? Does it do this or that? What don't you like about it? Is the keyboard okay? Things of that nature. They're going to require some feedback from us as we go through the process.
So I likened it to the Gillette razors. You used to go down to Gillette. They had these people testing their razors all the time. It's the same kind of program. Now Dell's running that, sending out tests. As part of it, you have to fill out, questionnaires and surveys. Did you like this? Did you like that? And then they change stuff and send it back. And we made those changes. So.
How many years ago did they do that?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Gillette?
Oh, gosh.
Gillette still does it, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they still have.
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know.
They still have people. Actually, they would love you, for the beard. But yeah, Gillette would send out
That's funny.
new blades every 2 weeks to people and ask you to rate their blades, and they'd change them a millimeter. And did you get cut? And it's kind of the same thing. They'll look at these things, and it might be the keyboard or it might be the screen that they're looking at to change. So it's an interesting program. We use Dell all the time. All our computers are Dell. That was done years ago, that we standardized all our desktops and laptops with Dell. So this will just give us that extra opportunity to test the latest and greatest stuff without having to buy it.
So, if I may, you mentioned that they would give you these items to use for a period of time? and then you
One
would-
at a time.
One at a time?
One at a time. Yeah, it's pretty controlled. So-
And then you would return the item?
Correct. So
Along
you
with
have the
your
option to, there's no
feedback.
obligation to buy it. So they
Right.
send the device out, we go through, test it out, provide some feedback. If we like the device, we may have the option to keep that device and use it for our own purposes in the town. The other options, we send it back and we request a different device. Go through the same process. Their idea is to get product out to us that we may not consider and potentially purchase at a later date.
So, but to keep the device, you can keep it up to $1,500 worth.
Correct.
So if it's a $2,000 laptop, you'd have to buy
You'd have to
the
pick up the
laptop,
gap.
and they give you a $1,500 credit for it.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, very neophyte or whatever question. Is there a time limit between receiving the advice and giving feedback? And the reason I ask is it difficult for the user to come up with whatever feedback Dell might think is
Appropriate.
appropriate and correct?
Yeah, in the program, it mentions a 30-day feedback component where they expect you to provide some feedback about that particular device within a 30-day component. If you don't provide the feedback, you can return the device, no obligation. If you continue with that device in the program, you have to keep continuing the feedback process. So they do put somewhat of a timeline on that, in a sense where they do want you to be active in the program. They don't want to just give you a device. So it's kind of a two-way street, if you want to think about it that way. That's the way I look at it, is here's the device to try, but we're expecting you to, run this through the paces and provide us valid feedback so we can make the product better, or potentially, provide a different device that might suit you better. And that's the concept of the program.
Would you envision this taking much of your time?
No, I mean, right now I have like one target project for the fire department. I have one particular device that I'd like to bring in and, test out with the fire department and see if that might be a fit. It's a device that we wouldn't normally buy, like a regular laptop here. We buy those for end users, to work, town employees at different times, we purchase them. So we have a specification for our desktops, laptops, in those matters. So those are just regular purchases. When they need to be purchased, we buy them. This would be a device like for the fire department specific purpose, to try that device out. That's where I see it as a valid option. You know, like I said, they have iPads and they have a Microsoft Surface device. This would be an alternate device that they would be able to review. And if they provide us the feedback that it's not what they're looking for, I think we would simply return it unless it makes sense to keep it for another purpose, for another user.
Okay, thanks.
So the impact, I don't think, would be very much on us right now.
Barbara?
So the 1,500, is that a one-time fee to get into the program? Is it per device that we end up getting?
It's one device that we would get to keep
Okay,
as part of the program. Up to
You
1,500
don't
is
pay
the
for it.
credit.
okay,
Correct.
okay.
So if it was 2,000, we would have to pick up the gap on that
Right.
device.
If you keep it.
If you keep it,
Right.
correct. If we return it, we're not obligated to purchase anything.
Okay,
just
so,
goes
and then
back.
if they sent you another device, you're still, that 1,500 is still like the warranty, if you will.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a constant cycle. So we could bring one device in and try it. If that device suited us, we could, go through the process of the credit and apply it and put it in production, or we could send it back. So
Yeah, so there's no money out of pocket unless we buy it.
correct.
Right.
But it's a one-time program. If you went back next year to get another item,
It's
You're
an
not there anymore.
annual program, right? And they may or may not renew it, right?
Oh,
At the,
okay.
or offer it next year. It's offered this calendar year, so we could take part in it and get one device, try it, send it back. I think there's a limit of 5. I mean, they don't want you going through a cycle
through
of
the entire-
computers. Yeah, and using them and sending them back. I could see that as a possible scenario in some cases. Yeah.
All right, anything further?
it seems easy enough.
Yeah, I don't
Benign
think too much
enough, I
time.
guess.
It's gonna be taking feedback, giving feedback. It's the pleasure of the council. Nancy,
I'd like to make a motion.
please.
The town council will participate in the Dell Seed program, allowing the town to test Dell's newest devices and keep them in exchange for providing feedback. The estimated donation amount is $1,500 pursuant to RSA 31:95-E and Charter Article 8-50.
Second.
Motion by Nancy Murphy, seconded by Barbara. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed or abstained. 600. Thank you, Jonathan. Next on the agenda is council to have a review from Finance Director Thomas Boland to review the key financial information for the quarter ending December 31st, 2022. Hi, Tom.
Let me just get this up on the screen here. All right, so it is time to review the town's financial results through the second quarter of fiscal year 22-23. And that's the 6-month period from July 1, 2022 to December 31, 2022. And I'm pleased to report that the town's financial position remains strong. We'll go through a bunch of the numbers, but hopefully that will be self-evident. I'm very confident that the budgeted appropriations for the full fiscal year will be sufficient to fund the town's operations. As part of the review, we will talk about some cost overages, primarily in the issue of overtime wages. But first, I wanted to kind of go through a background to explain how we deal with those overruns and what the source of funds is to be able to absorb those overruns. This is a chart by department of regular wages, not including overtime, just scheduled normal wages, salaries and wages by department. every year when we prepare the annual budget, we budget for full employment. We really don't have a choice but to do otherwise. If you had a situation where you had no turnover, and no open positions, you need to be able to pay the people what they have owed to them. But as we all understand, there always are some amount of turnover. Positions go unfilled for a period of time while we go through the recruiting process and look for qualified people. And we know that in particular in the areas that require special skills like police and fire and CDL drivers and things of that sort, it can take a significant amount of time to find the right individuals to bring on board and fill those openings. So this is really the primary source of our budget savings, if you will, every year, is what we have left in regular wages once you factor in those absences, whether they be the result of turnover and positions going unfilled for a period of time. It also includes situations where we might have employees who are out on disability or workers' comp. The town gets reimbursed through its insurance carrier for what gets paid to those individuals during those absences. So their wages don't get reflected here. But those absences, depending on the department and the type of work involved, often have to be backfilled with overtime from other employees. So I wanted to kind of give you the picture of where we stand in terms of these regular wages. You can get a sense of the magnitude of the I refer to them as savings, but it's the amount that we expect to be under budget in regular wages for the year. So the first column presents you the full year's budgeted amount for those regular wages for each department. Second column shows you what we have spent for the first 6 months of the year. Then you got a column that shows you the percent of the budget that remains after those first 6 months. So 6 months is half a year. In any situation where we have more than 50% of the budget remaining, you're theoretically to the good, and we'll have some amount of savings over the course of the full year. Based on these numbers, I have projected out in the last column just simple math, although maybe not quite as simple as you might think. There are 25 weeks worth of payroll in the first 6 months of the year. We end up with 27 weeks in the second 6 months of the year. So I took the year-to-date expenditures divided by 25 weeks and then multiplied by 52 to project where we'd be at the end of the year, and took the difference between that number and the annual budget to come up with this annualized savings number in that final column. Now, understand not all of that will be realized. We are trying to fill these positions and absences we may have had for things like short-term disability and workers' comp, hopefully won't recur to the same level in the second 6 months of the year. So, but this gives you an idea of the potential magnitude of what we have in salary savings for the year. Just to highlight obviously the biggest numbers are in our fire and police departments, along with highway, and you're going to see that corresponds pretty highly with where we also have some overages on the overtime front. which we'll get to. Just to note, the one department here, code enforcement, where we've got less than 50% of the budget remaining. There's some seasonality to that. The overages there through the first 6 months really relate to the part-time building inspector that we hired to deal with one of the busier times of year, which occurs in the first and second quarter during building season. I would expect that amount to kind of correct itself over the course of certainly the third quarter. There won't be much activity there at all, which will kind of bring that number back into line. So I don't have any concerns there. That's really the reason why that looks the way it does. The other thing I was going to mention before we move on from this, that this is the way the numbers look, and it's a financial analysis, and it looks pretty good, but there is a cost to this situation that we find ourselves in, and that we have been in for the last couple of years, where positions are very difficult to fill, and we are going with positions being open for a significant amount of time, particularly in the fire and the police and the highway departments. Employees are working more hours, so you need to be, I guess, alert and cognizant of the fact that there are potential issues with that relating to burnout, injuries, morale, those kind of things. The fact is, most of the departments in town are being asked to do more with less, and have been for a period of time. So I just wanted to kind of raise that as an issue. I don't think it's something that there's a significant level of concern about yet, but something I think that needs to be at least in the back of our minds to keep an eye on, should these tight labor market conditions persist for the long term. So as usual, we take a look at that our health insurance costs, that being one of the bigger expenditures that we have beyond, other than wages. And you'll see, based on this chart here, our health insurance is down compared to the prior year, slightly. And our health insurance rates actually did go down when you compare fiscal 22-23 versus the prior year of 21-22. They went down a little bit. So that's part of the reason for the decline. The other reason would be open positions where we're not incurring that health insurance expense. So you can see on the bottom there, I've highlighted the annual budget for health insurance for the town. This is general fund only, but the total budget for the year is $3,356,000. Through the first 6 months, we have spent 46% of that budget. We spent $1,530,000. So we're in fine shape in terms of the budget. The annualized savings, if you look at that, same way that we just did with wages, is almost $300,000 for the year. Again, not all of that will be realized, but a good portion of it will be, depending on how long it takes to get up to fully staffed. This chart looks at New Hampshire retirement contributions by employee group. We break out fire and police separately from group one, which is everybody else, basically. So fire and police have different contribution rates than everybody else. So that's why we kind of always analyze this in this manner. But you'll see NHRS is down very slightly compared to the prior year. Rates did not change between the two periods of time that we're comparing here. But again, due to the circumstances we have with open positions, we do have a slight decline. It's not as much as you might expect, and not as much as we've seen in looking at wages and looking at health insurance, and that's because overtime wages are subject to New Hampshire retirement contributions as well. So that's why these numbers aren't showing the same decline, but we are still in good shape with respect to the budget. You'll see on the bottom of the chart there, I show that the annual budget for the town is $3,332,000. And through the first 6 months, we spent $1,646,000, which is 49% of the budget. So we're pretty much tracking right in line when it comes to expenses. Now we get to the overtime picture. For this chart, we really just focus on police and fire. The next chart deals with all the other departments, which you can't really see on this chart because the magnitude of the police and fire overtime numbers kind of dwarf the other departments. So you'll see overtime for police and fire is down compared to last year, and in the case of fire, down compared to the last couple of years. We have, but they are tracking ahead of our budget estimates, I should point out. We have emerged from the peak effects of the pandemic, which were reflected in those prior 2 years. But now we're still seeing the excessive overtime or as a result of the open positions, which I've keep mentioning as the recurring theme to this presentation, which require the use of overtime to ensure adequate staffing levels, particularly in those public safety related departments. This strips out the police and fire and looks at overtime for the rest of the departments in town. You'll see general government overtime is running ahead of last year, but it's a minuscule amount, and we actually are below budget in that case. Communications, highway, and solid waste are all running ahead of the prior year, and they are exceeding the budget estimates for all of the reasons that we've just talked about. In the case of solid waste, in addition to the absences, they've also had an increase in the volumes of trash that they've been dealing with at the facility, and it's required some additional overtime. The numbers are skewed a little bit because it includes the summer months where we have the extended hours at the transfer station. So that picture will improve maybe a little bit as we go forward to the second half of the year. These are
We have dealt with some significant issues at solid waste, health concerns with some of our employees. And that's why the overtime in solid waste is so much higher. As we've mentioned so many years from now, is that when somebody goes to solid waste and works on a Saturday, it's 100% overtime because they already worked their 40 hours. With these illnesses that we have had, we're bringing in people on Saturday, which is our busiest day, at 8 hours of overtime. Go back to highway a little bit. Remember, it's cyclical. If we don't have snow, the overtime's down. At the end of December, we got hit with a couple of big storms that these guys were 60, 70 hours of, they worked 60 or 70 hours, which is 30 hours overtime. January, we had we had a couple storms. Most of February, except for this last storm, has minuscule overtime. So it's cyclical with them. Code enforcement and, not code enforcement, but communications, once again, we're down a position. We got to fill the shifts. Police and fire. Fire, we're staffing till 11. They've had some injuries. Some have vacancies. We're staffing till 11. And police, they've been running all year about 4 or 5 positions under. So to keep the town protected, we made the conscious decision to use overtime to keep the town protected. So that's why some of these overtime numbers, I don't want you to go, oh my God, they spent $166,000 more. It's because of situations. And we look at this on a monthly basis and a bi-weekly basis with the department heads to see what they're projecting going forward. We should start seeing hopefully a little decline in fire because we should be 100% in the coming few weeks. We should be up to 100% on fire of staff. Police, we're still going to be down 4 positions, so we're going to see it there. Highway, we're down 5 plow truck drivers right now, equipment operator 1s. So we're going to see some overtime there. So, we're working through some of these staffing needs. And I believe that in highway, in wastewater, because we're down, but with the new contract coming ahead, that's why it's so important in April to pass these contracts. Because to pass these contracts, then we can get these positions filled. Because they're all looking at how much does this town make? How much does that town make? How much can I make here? How much can I make there? And they're going to where they can make the most money. I can't blame them. But with these contracts, it will make us more appetite and competitive with these other communities. So we should start seeing some of these vacancies. So overtime numbers will come down.
So these are the overtime numbers, and this is a presentation that kind of mirrors what we looked at with regular wages. Takes the annual budget in the first column versus the year-to-date expenditures through the first 6 months, then shows what's remaining, what percent of the budget is remaining. And again, you would want that number if all was right with the world to be 50% or more. And you can see we've got several cases where that's not the case. And then similar to what I did with the wages, I kind of projected out the annual savings or cost overruns that we have that we're looking at with regard to overtime numbers if things remained unchanged. Again, not all of the overruns will be realized in this case as we get fully staffed and fill the openings that we currently have. But I guess the thing to take away is the magnitude of these numbers you can see are significantly less than the magnitude of the savings that we were showing on the regular wages side. That's what gives me comfort that we're doing fine and it will all work out in the end.
So if I might, what you're suggesting is that 356,000 overage and overtime versus the 1.7 million underage in salary balances out. It's
Correct.
Is it a 1-to-1? Meaning that we're still like 1.4 million over in wages? You put them so far apart from each other. I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what are we missing or what are we not seeing here?
We're going to have
I
a
think
wage
that's
surplus. We are.
there will be a surplus. It won't be the 1.4 million.
No, I
It'll
understand
be
that.
something less
Those
than
numbers you
that,
put out are
but-
kind of pie in the sky because you're taking a straight average
Right.
and we don't
Right.
know. But
There'll be a wage surplus. It all depends on second and third and fourth quarter hiring as well. Like I said, some of these are going to go down because we're getting fully staffed.
The overtime will.
and the overtime will go down too, but wages will go down. We're gonna have a wage surplus,
Okay.
so we'll see some appropriation savings due to wages as well, and throughout the whole budget. But it won't be, it's not a direct correlation of 1.4 minus the 3, coming up with $1 million because of how quick math average.
Yeah.
But there will be significant
Okay.
wages.
This chart shows where we stand in terms of total expenditures by department through the first 6 months. You've got your annual budget in the first column, your year-to-date 6-month expenditures in the second column. And then the difference between those two gives you the balance remaining in your budget going forward. Then we've got my favorite column of encumbrances, which really reflect amounts, contracts, purchase orders that we've committed to spend future money towards. So those numbers don't really have anything to do with the first 6 months of the year. They're monies that we've committed to spend already in the second 6 months of the year. But if you take those out, it shows what you've got uncommitted, I guess, or available funds in the budget as of the end of December. And if you compare that to the budget amount on a percentage basis, that's what the last column represents. And again, as long as we're over 50% of the budget remaining, that's a good sign. That's where we would want to be. The cases where we're not, it's really because of that encumbrance column. It's a department where we have committed certain expenditures in the second half of the year that are kind of being taken out there and skewing those percentages. In all of the cases, really, if you looked at the amount before the encumbrances, we've got more than 50% of the remaining budget left in almost everywhere, exception being solid waste and welfare. Welfare is a seasonality issue with when we make the payments to the health services organization. We make those upfront at the very beginning of the year, but they cover the whole year. So we're always seeing that percentage being low in welfare through the second quarter, but we're doing fine there in terms of the complete annual picture. The other thing we look at is some of our major revenue numbers, because that obviously impacts the tax rate that we'll be coming up with as the year goes on. This chart, I really just would like you to focus on auto registrations. The next chart will get into interest and building permits, because you can't really see much of them when you put them side by side with auto registrations. We keep talking about auto registrations. You can see there's a little bit of a downtick from the prior year in terms of where we stand at the end of December, but we're still on track to hit our budget number of $5.6 million. Through the first 6 months, we've received $2,862,000 in auto registration revenues, which is 51% of the annual budget. So again, everything looks okay in terms of auto registrations to this point.
It appears that it's starting a trend, though.
You could say that we're seeing a bit of a trend, but as long as the number doesn't, or as long as the line doesn't go like that, we're doing okay.
The other thing you're starting to see, though, if you watch TV, a lot more car advertising sales. 2.25 60-month financing. There's a lot more of that going out there. Ford, Volkswagen, you name it, they're all starting to advertise now for sales, where before they had no car ads. So it's turning around, and they're trying to get people in with the interest rate. We'll give you a break on the interest rate at 2.25, where if you go to your bank, you're going to pay 5 kind of deal, and trying to hook people that way. So and now that what that tells me is that inventory is starting to pick up at these places, so that the people who have been waiting to buy a car are going to buy a car, because now it's not sticker plus $5,000.
And they have the chips.
Yes.
Yeah. Stuck with one key because they didn't have it for so long. Thanks, Tom.
So auto registrations are the biggest source of revenue for the town, other than property taxes. So that's a big one that we follow. But we also look at building permits, as well as interest on our pooled cash balances. You can see building permits is slightly ahead of where we were last year. We're only at 47% of the budgeted amount of 265,000. But that's a highly seasonal number. And probably the busiest quarter for building permits is the fourth quarter of our fiscal year, as we get into spring and people are teeing up construction projects and whatnot. So I'm still confident that we're going to be close to, if not over budget, in terms of building permits by the time everything shakes out for the year. Interest income is a good story that keeps getting better. It's obviously there's a downside to that too. Interest rates have gone up, and that comes at a cost for our residents and potentially for the town, to the extent that we're looking to go out and borrow any money, which we're fortunately not at the moment. But we are getting significantly higher interest earnings on our cash balances. You can see through the first 6 months of the year, we've received $374,000 in interest, and that has really accelerated in the latter part of this 6-month period. So we're already at 85% of our budgeted amount for the year of $439,000. But I'm projecting if nothing changes in terms of the interest rate picture, that we're going to be up slightly over $1 million in interest for the full fiscal year. So we've got a nice amount there that will help bring down the final tax rate once we get around to setting that in the fall. But that's the best news we've had in a while when it comes to interest. And that was what I had to present, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you guys might have.
Anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts?
I appreciate the additional detail that you've gone through here. It's a nice presentation.
Yep,
Thank you.
it's very good. Things are looking okay. All righty.
All right.
We are in great financial shape,
Yep.
both
Knock on wood.
appropriation wise and revenue wise.
Yep.
We should see surpluses in both. Knock on wood, but yes, we should definitely see some surpluses.
Thank you, Tom. All righty. Next on the agenda is item 6 under new business. Status of permit requirements for the craft fairs submitted by Jody Donahue. Just feel free to step up here. For the annual craft fair to be held May 13th from 10 to 5 p.m. at the Merrimack Premium Outlets. Hi, Jody.
There we go. So I come before you last year, if you recall. I came approximately the same time of year
asking for an exception for vendor permits in town. They carry a $50 fee. Generally, the show that I have at the Merrimack Outlets runs from 25 to 35 vendors. These vendors are all handmade artists and crafters. I know last year it was a one-time exception. So this year I'm really coming for several reasons. First is upon the meeting last year, after the exception was granted, it was also noted that the ordinance 180 was going to be reworked. So I suppose I'm here to find out the status of that rework. I know there was a lot of questions about the craft fair and where they fall under as far as definition goes. What I'd like to ask is that the council consider a permanent exception or a permanent exemption for craft fairs. A craft fair, to me, is something that can be put on by anyone. What I offer is a craft show. It's not put on by anyone. I'm a promoter. These vendors, exhibitors, have to submit applications. They have to be vetted. I jury them. I've been in business for 8 years. I'm not somebody that just came out and decided, oh, let me rent a venue. These venues are careful with who they rent to. They ask me to come back because I bring people in. I bring people to your town. They continuously ask us to come back because we're safe, we're successful, and the product quality is very high. That's something we're very proud of. So in asking for this permanent exemption or exception, this is why I'm asking for it. Currently, right now, the permanent exceptions are any nonprofit organization, any person conducting business as a trade show, or anybody that has a permanent business or temporary premises. I kind of wonder if maybe a temporary premise is a venue that I rent in town. All my contact information, which is part of your requirement here, is out there. We do print ads. I have cards. I have banners and signs, not just my contact information. So if anyone has any issues with credit cards or damaged products, they know who to get in touch with. They're getting in touch with me. I hopefully will provide a little bit of safety and make you all feel a sense of lower risk involved because I'm the promoter. So my craft shows are with a promoter. I'm the one taking the risk. It's my business. I have the experience. I have the insurance, and I'm willing to provide all of that to the town. A lot of towns recognize this and make it easy for these artists and artisans, crafters, that I'm the promoter, I submit the permit on behalf of them. I cover the inspection fees, any documentation preparation fees, or any other fees that need to be covered. Health inspection, any of those, the promoter generally covers those for the towns that I deal with. Of course, there's sometimes towns that don't do that, but there's several that do. And others don't require anything, which is kind of surprising. And now let's talk about the required exemptions. So for those that currently under Ordinance 180 that receive exemptions, if you sell a balloon, popcorn, souvenirs, or food at a parade, you're exempt. If you are part of a farmer's market, you are exempt. I would challenge anyone. I have more experience than any charity out there that has a volunteer putting on a craft fair. We vet, we review, they deal with me for years. These are solid people that I'm going to have them there representing me. And I feel confident in their ability and that they're solid people. I also would challenge that I'm just as confident as I'm just as capable as any trade show host, someone putting on a trade show. I can put on a parade. I'm not grabbing my vendors from parades. I'm not grabbing them from street corners. Do they come in from out of state? Yes, they do. But again, I vet them. I review their applications. We look up their business history. We do the background checks on them, not a criminal background check, but we do background checks on them because again, they're representing me. It's not a non-for-profit with a volunteer, and I don't mean to dismiss them, they're very important, and their fundraisers are very important. But to charge every single one of them $50 and go through the additional paperwork, I'm just asking for that permanent exemption, because perhaps we could be a parade if you want us to march people through the middle of the craft show, but that's not who we are. We're high quality products offering to the community. So the other concern I think last year was confusion. You know, sometimes if there's an exemption here, there's not an exemption there. As far as granting me the exemption last year, well, there is confusion, because I do have someone that participates in the Merrimack High School Craft Fair put on by Merrimack High School. They don't have to do the permitting. There's also a fair that the Knights of Columbus puts on. They don't have to do permitting. What about this winter carnival I just heard about? Do they have crafters? Are they doing permitting? I don't know. It's put on by Parks and Recreation. I have other opportunities in town to bring shows here, and right now everything's on hold. Because I said, I can't get, these artisans aren't going to come with me to Merrimack because they have to do all this paperwork. They have to submit the $50 in addition to their other travel costs and all the rising costs that are associated with their products and putting their product together and their time. So I hope that you guys can consider and know that G&E Events is a solid, reputable company, and I will stand up 100% for any one of my vendors and know that they're putting out a solid product and they're honest people. What questions do you have for me?
You're right. We've had recent discussion about revising 180. Was trade shows under that new one? I don't think it was.
There's no exemptions except for nonprofit
Right.
or
that's-
charitable
That's what my memory
organizations.
is.
Right.
Okay.
There's no more exemptions for anybody. The other thing we talked about in Jody's case would be she would come in and take responsibility for all the paperwork, but the vendors would still have to pay the $50. That was the other thing, that sentence we discussed about promoters taking the responsibility to make sure that the vendors are up and up, and then, but the
right.
vendor would still have to pay the
Thanks for
permit fee of
reminding me,
$50. And we talked a little bit about yard sales, the definition of a yard sale, which is different than this as well. But yes, we are in the works of that. Should be finalized by March 23rd, if all goes well. We have a public hearing scheduled on the 9th, final read scheduled for the 23rd. It goes in effect April 1st.
Thank you.
I remember a big part of last year's discussion was that, that you had been aware of it and had been running for a few years. And I thought that was the reason for the one-time exemption.
And my memory also is, it was at the April 28th meeting, so it was a little bit later than this.
Oh, correct.
And the craft fair was scheduled for May 7th. And my memory was that was a curveball to you and to the vendors. And that there was a basically last minute. And it was not fair. And I totally agreed with there at the time. But you're right. Our motion was clearly allow one-time exemption. So you're right on that. But I remember at the time thinking, you know, through no fault of you or your vendors, you didn't know about it, and it was a time issue. So that's why I supported it then. I don't support it now. Just to let you know. Because I think we have reviewed the thing, and I wanted to verify that. I'm not sure how anyone else feels.
Nancy?
I agree with Nancy. I remember that conversation. It was a single exemption based on what was a surprise time frame, and we thought that was just fair. And I think the council was good to do that. But it's been a year. I think we've reviewed the policy, and it's pretty clear that that's not the way it's going. it's the difference between a for-profit and a
Fundraiser.
a fundraiser. Yeah, so I couldn't support that. Thank you.
So fundraiser over not-for-profit.
I don't know, she was questioning fundraiser, I don't know what your question actually was, so you can restate.
So can you define fundraiser for me?
I think the point that I was trying to make is that when we reviewed the policy now excludes everything except nonprofit. And that's, you were referring to like the Knights of Columbus and
The high
the
school
senior
fair.
citizens or something like that. So that's the
School-
exclusion. So
school-
anything else,
School craft fair,
correct.
like most of the schools will have it. And you're right, some of your vendors may in fact do that as well. But that would be under that clause for a nonprofit.
Or
fundraiser,
nonprofit offering a
Or
craft fair.
fundraiser, right. Senior center.
Senior center, all the elementary schools do
Schools.
it. The church,
Churches.
church has one. There's, Friends and Family has the event here
Fundraiser.
that they do. All basically was nonprofit is what we were looking at.
So I guess that's it. I mean, we can get Jody a copy of the work that was done last week, if we have a draft of what's going on.
We have some modifications that were presented that I haven't completed yet. But they'll be completed before the March 9th meeting for sure. That would bring it forward for a public hearing that's open to the public for their comments. So March 9th is the scheduled. It's gonna hit the paper tomorrow explaining the chapter 180 of the ordinance. Public hearing is on March 9th.
All right,
Okay. Thank you for your time.
thank you, Jody. Lost my last agenda page. Nancy bailed me out.
What? There was no minutes.
No minutes, comments,
Right
There's
there.
no minutes.
comments from the press, no press, comments from the public, comments from the council. Seeing none,
Seeing none, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
motion by Lon Woods, second by Nancy Harrington. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 600. Thank you.